You know, for any student of Islamic knowledge, there's this one fundamental question that comes up again and again. How exactly are we supposed to do research? Well, today, we're going to explore that question by diving into the life and work of the great Moroccan scholar, Dr. Farid al-Ansari, and his absolutely landmark book, The ABCs of Research in the Islamic Sciences.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Now, for an Ansari, this wasn't just some academic exercise. This was a deep, personal mission to build a research methodology that was genuinely rooted in the Islamic tradition itself. And it all started with one powerful idea.
I mean, just let that sink in. This quote gets to the absolute heart of his entire project. For him, knowledge isn't about just passively collecting information, it's about actively building something with it. The goal isn't to be a walking encyclopedia, right? It's to be an architect of new understanding. And this one idea really sparked his entire life's quest.
So where did this obsession with methodology, or manhaj as it's known in Arabic, even come from? Well, it actually started with a really simple lesson way back in his childhood, but it grew into the defining mission of his entire academic life.
It really all began with something his father called nidham, a system. See, in their house, everything had a specific place, a strict order, and this taught him the value of structure from a young age. Then later at university, a professor dropped this bombshell saying that manhaj, methodology, was the core problem of the Ummah. That planted a seed. But it was really under his mentor, Dr. al-Bushihi, that it all clicked. He saw firsthand that methodology wasn't just some abstract theory, it was a practical way of life, the total opposite of just making things up as you go. It was the blueprint for knowledge itself.
But here's the thing. When al-Ansari became a professor himself, he ran into a huge problem. His students, they needed a guide, a how-to for their research. But when he went to the library to find a book for them, he found, well, nothing. Just a massive gaping hole on the shelf.
And that question just consumed him. It drove him to survey pretty much everything that was out there on research methodology. And what he discovered was honestly pretty troubling. He realized that there was this huge void, and the few books that did exist, he sorted them into three very different and very problematic categories.
Okay, so the first pile of books he found were all written from a Western secular perspective. Now, to be fair, they were great for the technical stuff. You know, how to format your footnotes, how to structure a paper, all that. But the ideas behind them, their philosophical foundations, were a huge issue. They were completely rooted in secularism, which he saw as potentially really dangerous for a young Muslim researcher who wasn't yet firmly grounded in their own tradition.
And to really hammer this point home, al-Ansari brings up this just shocking quote. The scientist is methodologically an atheist. This for him crystallized the entire problem. An approach like this demands that the researcher basically put their faith on a shelf to be objective. And that's a direct clash with an Islamic worldview where God is the source of all reality.
So the second category he found was books on methodology, but for totally different fields, like literary criticism or sociology. And the problem here is pretty obvious, right? It's a question of fit. You can't just take the tools used to analyze a Shakespearean play and apply them to the Quran or Hadith. If you do, you risk dragging in all these foreign concepts and assumptions that have no place in the Islamic sciences.
All right, so you're probably thinking, what about books from within our own tradition? Well, he found a gap there too. They were basically split into two camps. On one side, you had these theoretical works that were super interesting, talking about the philosophy of method in Islamic history, but they gave zero practical step-by-step help for a student. And on the other side, you had applied books that tried to be practical, but they were often just kind of shallow, a messy patchwork of other methods without any real solid foundation.
So faced with this void, al-Ansari realized he couldn't just write another textbook. No, he had to do something way more ambitious. He had to lay a brand new foundation for the future of Islamic scholarship.
He used this beautiful and humble Arabic phrase to describe his book, Wad'u labna, which means to place a foundational brick. I love that. He knew this book wasn't the final finished building, it was the first solid brick, a starting point that future generations could then build upon to create a whole new intellectual structure.
So, what did this foundational brick actually look like? Well, he distilled his entire approach down into 6 core principles, or dawabit as he called them, which are like these essential controls that should guide every single research project in the Islamic sciences. Let's break them down. So, these 6 pillars, they all work together as one complete system. You've got al-ta'abudi, which is about seeing research as an act of worship. Then al-ishkali, making sure you're solving a real problem.
Third is al-shumuli, which connects your little project to the bigger picture. Fourth, al-alawiyat, focusing on what's actually important for the ummah. Fifth, al-waqiyah, making sure your research is grounded in reality. And finally, al-minhaji, which means sticking to a clear method. Now we're going to take a closer look at the first two, because they are absolutely critical. Okay, this first principle, al-ta'abudi, is a total game changer. It reframes the entire act of research. It's not just an academic task, it's an act of worship, an ibadah. And what that means is, your intention, your niyyah, has to be pure. Suddenly, academic honesty isn't just about avoiding plagiarism, it's a spiritual duty, because your ultimate audience isn't your professor, it's Allah. That's the ultimate guarantee of integrity.
Next up is al-ishkali, the principle of problematization. This basically means your research has to be trying to solve a real, genuine knowledge problem, and ishkal. You're not just wandering around a topic collecting facts. You're on a mission to solve a specific puzzle. And this is key. The value of your entire project, all those hours of work, it all comes down to the value and the clarity of the question you started with.
And while all 6 of these pillars are crucial, these first 2, seeing research as worship and demanding that it solve a real problem, they really set the stage for al-Ansari's biggest goal. See, this was never just about academic rules. This was about something so much bigger, nothing less than rebuilding the Muslim mind itself.
This slide just captures his whole argument perfectly. On the one hand, you've got this passive act of just gathering information, where the researcher is basically a collector. But on the other hand, you have the active process of mastering a methodology. And when you do that, you're not a collector anymore, you're a builder. You're not just focused on what other people have said, you're focused on how to produce new knowledge and solve real-world problems.
And he leaves us with this incredibly powerful metaphor. He says that sound research methodology isn't some luxury. It's the very heart of the ummah. It's what pumps the lifeblood of clarity, purpose, and real knowledge through the entire body of the Muslim civilization. To be lazy or lenient here is to put the health of the entire body at risk.
And that really brings us to the final thought here. Al-Ansari's entire project forces us to ask this deep, profound question. If a clear, authentic, and rigorous methodology is truly the heart of our intellectual tradition, then how might mastering it do more than just improve our papers and fill our libraries? How might it actually help to revive and completely reshape an entire civilization?